Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I am Matt Connerton, and once again confirming our suspicions that he is, in fact, a shapeshifter, the Honorable Gary S. Hopper this week has taken the form of Jane Cormier.
Wow.
And he is trying to deflect with laughter that that's indeed what has happened. But I knew it all along.
Oh, my goodness.
How does it feel to be a woman?
It feels great to be a woman.
All right.
Yes.
Well, good for you, Gary.
Okay, what an opening.
Yes. Well, thank you for playing along. I was saying off air, Phil Griazzo, he had none of it when he guest hosted.
Oh, well, he maybe didn't understand it was...
He shut me right down.
Oh, my.
Maybe that's because I asked him how it felt to be a woman.
Okay, he took offense.
I think so.
Okay, it's all right because I am a woman. I won't take offense.
Very good, very good.
So
you're going to be filling in for Gary for a few weeks?
I will. I mean, Gary is such a sweetie, and it was a pleasure to honor his request, and I'm going to do the best I can to bring some levity and information to our show.
Good.
I'm happy to be here with you, Matt. I think that you're just great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You have a great way on camera. You keep it moving, and you have a great voice. You have a great speaking voice, so I can really appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome
Thank you very much. Well, I checked out on YouTube one of your opera videos.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Okay. Which one did you see?
It's very impressive. It was one, I don't remember the title, but it was at the Concord Music School, Concord Community Music School.
Okay, that was probably a concert that was a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay, yeah. You were there. I'm sure you've done a million of them, but you were on the stage and someone was playing piano
That's
next
right.
to you.
That was a recital. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
So very impressive.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It used to be my day job.
Yeah.
So then we jumped into some politicking, and, it's been a different road for sure.
Yeah.
But we're getting back to the opera, which we can talk about in another show when we need to. But we have a new opera company coming to Concord, New Hampshire.
Oh, excellent.
So it should be fun.
Very good. Very good. And we have a guest here.
We have a wonderful guest here. Susan Olson is our guest today, and Susan is, I guess, the director of a PAC called Packing New Hampshire.
Well, not director exactly. I'm one of the founders, and I'm the treasurer of Packing New Hampshire, which is a New Hampshire-based political action committee that seeks and supports strong Second Amendment candidates for New Hampshire state offices.
There you go.
So we raise money, and then we try to help find good, solid Second Amendment people to serve in the State House, either in the House or the Senate. One would hope also the governor's office.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's been around for about a year or so.
So it's pretty new.
Yeah, we're pretty new, and we've kind of kept a bit of a low profile. Simply because this is a very interesting year. We've been watching candidates. There are other, if you will, gun groups in New Hampshire that are membership-based, typically 501c4s, which do not get involved in politics at all. So we're the only one in New Hampshire that actually can take positions on candidates, can raise money and donate money on their behalf. And it's quite a lot of fun.
Oh, I imagine.
Yeah.
So where do you stand on the Second Amendment?
I'm pretty strong on the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
You probably realize this about me, and we just met, so you don't know, but I'm an independent.
Yeah.
I have some liberal views and some conservative views and some libertarian attitudes, some kind of all over the place.
There you
go. But this is an area where I tend to be pretty conservative. I believe that adage that an armed society is a polite society. And
Absolutely.
I think you both probably know the numbers a lot better than I do, but I know that statistically the two safest states in the country very often are New Hampshire and Vermont.
Right.
And we also are armed to the teeth
Yes.
in both of these states. So,
Indeed.
So obviously, again, it's if people are if people are armed and people know that people are armed, then there seems to be a lot less trouble. So
Yes.
I think Vermont, has the most relaxed gun laws. Is that?
That is absolutely true, and
it's very safe there.
Yeah, and it seems wholly inconsistent with their more traditional socialist political stance. But yeah, Vermont has much fewer restrictive gun laws than New Hampshire, and sadly, people from Vermont are not allowed to bring their firearms to New Hampshire because they are not required by New Hampshire state or by Vermont state law to have a license to either own their firearm or to have it on their person loaded. So they practically have to bring a note from their mother to bring a firearm into the state of New Hampshire. We had a piece of legislation that was introduced last year, in fact, that would have said any state that does not require a license is welcome in New Hampshire, but that failed. We had a real tough year last year for gun laws. The good news is we beat every one of them.
Yeah.
But that was one that made perfectly good sense and would have extended a hand to our hunting friends in Vermont, our instructors like me. I'm a pistol instructor. It would have allowed instructors to come into the state and say, co-teach with me someday. I teach women, and to have someone come down from Vermont, and but they can't do that, as I said, without a note from their parents.
Yes, which is really so silly, you know. And when we know now that there are so many states out there that have taken the stance that they have to really be, you know, making gun ownership much more difficult or onerous, and it's the total opposite of what's really the truth, and that is that the states that have gun laws in effect that are pro-Second Amendment have such a lower incidence of crime than those that have all of these laws. It's just so, there's no logic to it at all.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So New Hampshire, I'm happy to say New Hampshire is better than most, but you know what? We could do a lot better as well.
We could do a lot better, and in fact, we've been in a bit of a kerfuffle with our own Department of Safety over the last, 2 or 3 months. I've lost a little track of time over these past months with the primary campaigns and all the politicking that's been going on. But the New Hampshire Department of Safety issues or has on its website an application for a pistol or revolver license. And each local police department, I don't know what town or city you live in, but if you wanted to have a license, a pistol or revolver license that would allow you to carry it in your car or on your person with ammunition, you must be in possession of one of these licenses. You don't have to have one to own one, but you have to have one to take it out of your house and have ammunition. And it has evolved over the years and has become increasingly onerous is not the right word, but the questions have become more intrusive. Now, federal law requires that if you or I go to purchase a handgun, pistol at a gun store, that we must fill out what's called an ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, which really sounds like a great convenience store, but it's not. It's a horrible federal bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Form 4473. And it asks you all sorts of questions. But what you are required to answer are questions that would, if answered in the affirmative, identify you as what's called a prohibited person under federal law from owning a firearm. And that could be, you could be a convicted felon. You could have been dishonorably discharged from the military. You could be a substance abuser. There's maybe 8 or 10 things that if you say yes, then you will be denied that right. And whether we agree with it or not, that's currently the federal law. And the state of New Hampshire has mirrored many of these questions on its application that you would fill out at your local police office. But all of a sudden, about, 2 months ago, there was a question, a brand new question that appeared on the New Hampshire form. And the question said, has any state, small s, or regulatory or licensing authority ever claimed that you were prohibited from owning a firearm? Now, most people would say no.
Right.
But if you think about it, any state, that could be Hawaii, that could be Alaska, that could be Kansas, or any licensing or regulatory authority, could be the New Hampshire Barbering License Committee. It's very unclear, and whether they did it deliberately or not, I don't know. I'd like to think it was just stupid.
Yeah.
It could have been malevolent, but we saw that, and if you were to answer that question in the negative and say no, and all of a sudden it turns out that maybe a truant officer in New Mexico, right, said, you know what, I don't think they should be allowed to own a firearm, you would be in violation of that form and thus denied the ability to have that pistol or revolver license. So we called up the boys over at the Department of Safety and said, excuse us, but where did this come from?
Right.
Should never end a sentence with a preposition. I apologize for that. But we did ask that, and as it turns out, oddly enough, there is no procedure in the state of New Hampshire for that particular form to have undergone rulemaking under 541A, which is administrative rulemaking in New Hampshire. And so
explain what that means. There's a certain way that those questionnaires are supposed to be evolved for the public.
It's not even that. It's departments. When the general court passes a law, all right, you may see in them it says, and the commissioners shall make rules. All right. So a law has been passed, a new law, whatever that might be, and then the particular department, whether it's safety or environmental services or whomever, then goes to something called JLCAR, which is the Joint Legislative Committee on Administrative Rulemaking. And there's some lawyers over at Administrative Services that are the wizards there, and the committee is populated by legislators from the House and the Senate, usually an even number. And the particular agency will say, okay, under this statute, we believe that these are the rules that should be considered to implement this law. Well, as it turns out, in the New Hampshire statutes that regulate firearms, it states that there will be a pistol or a revolver application. And 2 years ago, there was a piece of legislation, and I apologize for not remembering it off the top of my head, that included under the umbrella and jurisdiction of the of JLCAR all agency forms and documents. So, for 2 years, this particular form, which is an application, has not been subject to administrative rulemaking, and we questioned that, and they said, well, we don't have to. We thought, well, okay. We don't like that. Funny, but the non-resident pistol application license is subject to rulemaking and goes back at least 20 years in JLCAR. Now, I'm not a fan of JLCAR. I'm not a fan of administrative rulemaking because there can be so much mischief that goes on there because it is so boring and so bizarre and so complicated that very few people follow it through the process.
Okay.
So things that happen for bad generally happen at JLCAR. So I don't necessarily want JLCAR to have authority, but if it's good for non-resident, it should be good for residents.
Right.
So we got kind of a big from the Department of Safety, and we caused a lot of discussion over there. Well, they've gone and all of a sudden, again, without notice, without authority, without anything, have pulled that question off the form.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. I mean, it's really something. I'm in a quandary to see how much power administrative rules really have over our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
You know, when you see this thing, I mean, when you see it, if you're not really a gun person, you might say, well, you know what, big deal. But understand that that's just what we caught on this specific.
Yeah.
Imagine how many more times that probably happens that goes under the wire that we don't see it.
Right.
That's why having such an onerous bureaucracy, you know, that makes administrative rules not a good thing.
Right. Of course, yeah.
No, and I think not this past session, but 2 sessions ago, a piece of legislation was introduced that would return bills that were signed into law back to the particular policy committee and give that policy committee the right to say, well, we would like to write the rules, or we're going to sign off on them before they go into effect.
Yeah.
Well, that got shut down. Okay. Oh, it's too time consuming. Oh, they may not be there. So it's a strange process,
Yeah.
and I'm really agnostic about whether the forms are subject to rulemaking.
Yeah.
But if one, then both.
Right. Consistency counts.
Consistency does count,
Absolutely.
and accountability counts. And just say, oh well, maybe it wasn't a good question, so we'll pull it off, without any notice at all.
Right.
So I'm
Yeah.
still a little miffed. Yeah, I'm a little miffed about that, and I think actually they have my picture in the lobby over at the Department of State, one of those big red circles and a slash through it. So we'll see
Well,
what
you know
happens.
They were very polite when we went over there. We went over once. And it
Well,
was
that's
very
because they
polite.
had no idea
Ah.
that they thought we were just a couple of dumb girls.
Okay.
Oh my! Well, we'll just and send us on our way. Well,
Right.
that really does not resonate with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, gee,
Yeah.
really?
So, yeah, I think that was their first mistake.
Yeah, yeah. It's remarkable to me that in a state that's seems to be as pro Second Amendment as New Hampshire is, that it seems like this battle never ends.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
They never give up on the left.
Yeah.
They will not be happy until we have nobody being armed, because that really is the end result. The end result is just trust your government to take care of you. And let's face it, that's never worked out too well for other countries that have gone down that road.
Right.
And
Right.
that wasn't what our country was formed with from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Well, the fact of the matter is that it was civilian firearms ownership that sort of dislodged the British from
right.
the colonies.
Right. Exactly.
And
I mean, it wasn't the militia? Which is always, isn't that the argument? The argument in the second.
Yeah.
Well, no, that was because they needed to arm. The Second Amendment is because they needed to arm the militia. And now you don't need to arm the militia anymore because you have people that will protect you.
Right.
Well, tell me about that. I mean, when I was sitting in the House last session, it was Belknap. I was in a rep for District 8 in Belknap. And my first time down at the well was against the stand your ground rule that they wanted to repeal. They wanted to, just take the teeth out of it,
Right.
to say that, well, okay, maybe you could use your arms if you're in your home, but once you are out of the home and maybe going into your car or in a parking lot somewhere,
or any place you are legally allowed to be.
right.
Yeah.
That you should not have that right. Well, I went to the well and blasted the authors of this bill, because who are they to tell me that I do not have the right to defend myself? I'm
Right.
going to run? Are you serious? That was part of the discussion on the floor. To get out of the situation.
Right.
Well, isn't that nice? I'm 5'2". I've been mugged 3 times in my life.
Have you really?
I have.
Oh, wow.
I've been mugged 3 times. Once when I was 18, once when I was in my 20s, once when I was in my 30s. Once was in a foreign country, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, wow.
But I can tell you what, I'm not running anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not running anymore, and I shouldn't have to. It's a logical argument. But the pacifists and the fear-mongering that people bring to this subject.
Mm-hmm.
New Hampshire has some of the most educated folks around with weapons,
Right.
with arms and guns in this state. There's a very, very educated populace. Why we have to have all this fear-mongering, and, oh, it's for the children, is, that's where they go, though, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
for the children.
Yeah. Well, because every time there's a school shooting, they use that, and
Yes.
it's you can't legislate everything based on the worst possible scenario. And school shootings statistically are pretty rare, which is why they're a big deal when they happen.
Right.
But then they seize on that hysteria, and it's like, okay, well, now there's going to be a school shooting every day
Right.
unless we take away all the guns.
Right. Isn't
And
that just the most? And
Yeah.
to me, I'm just so offended that they used those tragedies for the. I mean, it's those children died in a
Right.
horrific way. That's true, but you're actually building the narrative and using it
Yeah.
to support what is really taking back our rights in the Second Amendment. It's
Well,
wrong.
one of the horrible things.
Oh, we actually we have a call, Susan. If you don't mind just holding that thought for a moment, we'll grab this. Hi, welcome to Rock Paper Hand Grenades. Who's on the line?
Yeah, this is Steve.
Hi, Steve. What you
Hey,
got
how
for
you
us?
doing?
Good.
This is for Miss Olson. Just a couple of questions. Does she know of any groups that are in New Hampshire right now that are really trying to take our rights away? Maybe up north or even around us. I'd like to ask another question after she answers this.
Sure.
That are looking to take away our Second Amendment rights?
Yeah, are there any groups that have formed in New Hampshire that are making it difficult, or they actually?
You mean other
have
than
something-
Democrats?
But do you mean like actual
Yeah,
organizations?
I don't
instead
mean
of
to be flip, but
individuals?
yes, there are a couple of them actually, and they're a bit low key, and they're out on the seacoast. One is called Newcastle Promise, and they were formed following the events in Connecticut, and it's a group of women, oddly enough, and some men, I think, who just are horrified and think nobody should be able to have a firearm at all. There is a New Hampshire chapter of this bunch of nut jobs called Moms Demand Action.
The worst.
And they are here in New Hampshire. There's also, of course, Granite State Progress, which hates all guns. And yes, they would be thrilled, and they are actively, albeit quietly, working to take away your right to own and bear a firearm, and to defend you, to defend your family, your wife, your children, your job, your friends. Yeah, no, they believe me, they're getting legislation ready to be introduced into this session. If you look at the commercials, they're talking about common sense. We need common sense. Well, ladies, why don't you come chat to me?
Did you have a second part to your question?
Yeah. Now, these people, I'm going to follow up on that, but I want to ask a different question. You there?
Yes, we're here.
We're here.
Yep.
Okay. Everything went dead there for a second.
I have those
Are these
moments, I'm
people
sorry.
being government funded? Are they getting some kind of, kickbacks for doing this?
I don't know if I would say government funded, but there's a great deal of money that gets poured into these campaigns. They start basically at the national level, and then as they develop their state affiliates and state chapters, that money then is sent down to them for programmatic work. How much money that is, I have no idea how to even find that out, but I doubt seriously that they're doing it on their own dime.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and last question is, why is it that somebody, when they go to a gun store or a gun show, if they get not a license, but they can buy the gun, the ATF, whatever the state police say it's okay, why do they need a license to carry if they've already been checked out?
That's a very good question. We
All right, I'll let you answer that. I'll let you go then.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks.
All right, Steve, thank you.
We have been pushing for something here in New Hampshire called constitutional carry.
Right.
Oh, John Burt was mentioning that on Norman Friends.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You bet,
yeah.
you bet. And
They have that in
and
Vermont, correct?
Yes, they do.
yes, they do.
Okay.
And what that states is the Constitution is in fact your license. That if you are not, and we fall back again to the federal gun laws because they are in place, that if you are not a prohibited person by federal law, then you have a constitutional right to carry that gun. And
we tried to get that in New Hampshire.
we tried, and one senator stopped it. A Republican senator stopped it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Republican.
Yeah, and there are some people who think it just, it isn't a constitutional right
Yeah.
that we must be regulated. And one of the ugly things that came out of last session, we ended up with some folks working with us to defeat one bill in particular that you wouldn't necessarily think would be friendly to us. There was a bill that was introduced called Senate Bill 244, introduced by Senator David Waters, that would have automatically reported the names of people with mental health issues to the federal National Institute. It's called NICS. It's the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. And what it would do is if someone had, say, been admitted into the state hospital or into an emergency room by a physician, or under this particular bill, had you been appointed a guardian, say my 80-year-old mother, my 85-year-old mother was unable to manage her own affairs anymore for whatever reason. Either she was, forgetful, or my father had died and she didn't know how to do it, and someone was appointed, it could be me, to manage her affairs. That would have qualified for her name to be sent automatically to the feds, and she would be branded a criminal and a prohibited person.
Yeah.
Now, mental illness, to my knowledge, is not a crime.
Right.
And automatically assuming that someone with a mental health issue, whether it was my mother needing someone to manage her affairs, or a soldier coming back from Afghanistan who maybe wanted to have a little counseling because they were, just trying to decompress and get back into the world, anybody that had a mental health issue would automatically be branded a criminal. And we thought, you know what, that's just wrong. So believe it or not, we had the New Hampshire Civil Liberties Union and the New Hampshire Disabilities Rights Council, I believe, and if I've gotten that group wrong, I apologize, but people who joined us saying mental illness is not a crime, and to stigmatize the mental ill and automatically assume they're violent and automatically assume they're criminals, it's just wrong.
Right, yeah.
But see, it's the beginning.
Lumping them into one big category.
And it also starts the thing of, it has the luster of looking like, well, it's the responsible,
doing something.
common sense thing.
Right.
But what does it do? I mean, it starts that slippery slope, to go even further the next time.
And I assume, too, once someone gets on that list, it's really hard
You
to-
never get off. And that was, there was, forgive me, blood on the floor at the State House, because we got into a fight because there was part 2 attached to that bill that was said, well, you know what, we're going to have a process here in New Hampshire that will let people get their names off that list. Well, that's just not going to happen. All right, once you're on that list, it says, well, the Department of Safety, our good friends, may do something. And we said, okay, if you're serious about someone getting their record cleared, then let's go under the correct statutes, which are 135C, mental health statutes, and say if someone has, for example, come back from military service and had a tough time, or somebody's gotten divorced and they were depressed and needed counseling, or someone had lost a family member and whatever, they could then petition a court, and that exists now, to have the ability to petition to have your record expunged. And it's an ugly word, but then it would allow your record to be cleared, and those things forgiven. Now, it doesn't do anything if necessarily you're that violent offender, who's a felon or really is a prohibited person, but the person who would have fallen under this net, under 244,
that's what it
was wrong. Now, let me just say something here that, and folks don't like this when I say this, but for New Hampshire to have gone along with that automatic reporting would have in turn made New Hampshire's Department of Safety eligible for some funding. So we trade our family and our friends for funding.
Follow the money.
Follow the money.
Right.
Yeah.
Follow the
So
money.
it's an ugly business.
Yeah.
And I teach women. I teach. I'm a pistol instructor, NRA certified pistol instructor, and I teach women. And it's interesting when they come in for a class. Some may have already, had experience and just want to, like me, had 40 years of bad habits, gone through proper training to learn some things that you think you know, but maybe you should have reinforced. And I've had women that come in that truly are frightened and want to be able to defend themselves.
Yeah.
And at the end of that 8 or 10 hours, when they've gone through the class, when they've properly handled a firearm, when they've properly kitted themselves out with hearing protection and glasses, and they're standing there with an instructor in a safe environment, and they start putting marks on that target, to watch the change in their face from to
Yeah.
it's confidence. You see the confidence, and it doesn't mean that they're experts.
No,
Okay,
of course
walking
not.
away. You must practice, practice, practice like anything.
Yeah.
But it takes away a lot of that fear, and you know that maybe
Right.
it changes. It changes the way you walk. It changes the way you
Fear does
you
a terrible
approach-
thing, absolutely.
You approach a crowd. We teach situational awareness, and the confidence that it brings to even a young girl. I've taught girls as young as 16, with their parents' permission, of course. It teaches them not to be afraid. That first step of not being afraid.
Right.
That maybe I can look
It-
after myself.
Isn't it funny? It's a funny narrative again, because the left has sort of staked out this high moral ground in a lot of ways about being pro-woman, right? We
Yeah.
all know that the Republicans take big hits for being, quote, the war on women, right? Rah, rah, rah. Yet, it's the progressive left that would seek to take that empowerment of women knowing that if something happened, they could protect themselves and those they love.
Right.
Under the guise of what? Somebody else will do it for you? Maybe if the police can get there in 10, 15 minutes.
Right, right.
You know, I don't understand that. So this culture that we have right now, that somebody else can come in here and take care of you or do it better than you, you see, even in the Second Amendment debate, how important it is to let people know that's not true. Do not go along. Do not make the assumption that the gun is a bad thing.
Right.
People are the thing that causes these shootings. It's not the gun, and it's illness in most cases that
Oh,
causes
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
But, there's been a case in the news, it's kind of quieted down, a young woman at Dartmouth University who was being stalked.
Right.
Had requested properly through university channels the right to carry a firearm on campus to protect herself.
Yeah.
Walking out of class at night or here or there, and what young college people do to be able to protect herself, and they said no. So, there's this sanctimonious group that would rather see this young woman perhaps dead, harmed. Who knows what this stalker might do to her, rather than allow her to defend herself. So, as she's being attacked or she's being grabbed, she says, "Excuse me, hang on just a second. Let me blow my whistle or use my wasp spray or call the campus cops." Isn't going to happen.
Right.
Even UNH. I don't know if you've seen news just a couple of days ago that there were incidents of young women being followed.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I did see that.
And that the campus police are saying, "Don't worry, little lady, we'll walk you to your car."
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's silly.
I carry a gun because I can't carry a policeman.
So just to be clear, because I don't know the law in this area. So in New Hampshire, you can, if the college approves it, you can legally have a gun on a college campus. Because I know in some states you can't.
Mm-hmm.
It really is up to the university or the college, yes.
Okay.
Now, you cannot on school grounds like primary, secondary
Right.
schools. You cannot. There's a federal law that prohibits firearms on a up to 12th grade campus.
Which is the silliest thing in the world, right? Because
No, you don't
imagine.
necessarily want children having them,
No,
but
you
a
don't.
teacher or someone properly trained
Of
should be
course.
able
Right.
to be that resource.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine how the tragedies that we've seen in the past might have been different? It might have ended up differently had there been somebody right there
Right.
that could have taken action.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. When you start saying gun-free zones, you're just asking for trouble because
painting a big target
of
on
course,
yourself.
They know
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a very good point.
crazy stuff.
It's a very good point.
Crazy
Yeah.
stuff. So no, I have my earlier years as an opera singer, very very liberal population usually in the performing
Sure.
arts.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And certainly in opera, very elitist. I know that might sound a little bit caricaturish, but it's true,
Yeah.
And in my early years, I would never have thought to have protection.
Yeah.
And traveling all over the place by myself a lot of the time, whether it was to lessons in New York City or performing in different states, it would never have dawned on me. And I look back at that now, and I think to myself, you know what? I would never wish that for my daughter.
Right.
Because I was always constantly watching, especially after the first one. My first mugging was in can you believe this? The lobby of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C.
Really?
Totally.
Wow.
Totally. I mean, how weird is that, right? My mother had given me a $100 bill to go on my high school trip. And that was a lot of money for us.
Sure.
And it was in my pocketbook. And some gentleman, very tall gentleman, came and decided he wanted my pocketbook. And we had our tug fest to where I can remember thinking, I'm not giving this pocketbook up short of losing my arm because my mother will kill me. I cannot lose that money.
Right.
So that, he did get, he ran off, and I don't even really recall what happened to him, but I remember them picking me up off the floor, and that was my first experience. And the second one was very scary in the bowels of the New York City, 34th Street subway station.
Really?
In the middle of winter, where 3 or 4 youth tried to steal my fur coat that I was wearing, and that was a lot nastier. And the third one was in Vienna, Austria. As a young singer, I was followed home after a production. I was in a show, Phantom of the Opera. And you did 6 or 7 shows a week in that show, the Weber show. And you'd get out late at night, you know. Yeah. Well, this guy evidently had been following me for a few nights. And this one night decided to really, try to get right into my... The guy followed me all the way from the theater onto the Strassenbahn, walked all the way down the street to where I finally figured it out. I got into my apartment, and he's there banging on the door outside my apartment.
Wow.
Yeah. And so...
That's intense. We have another call. Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who's on the line?
Tom?
Hi, Tom. Welcome.
I have a question. I don't know if you could answer my question of the two ladies that's speaking right now. But, we're talking about guns, which let's say if you're walking on the street and like a couple of guys come after you and you think your life has been threatened, do you have the right to protect yourself?
Well, if they come after you, I guess understand your ground, right?
Yes. Come after you in what way?
Well, they're going to attack you.
I would assume so. You would have the right to defend yourself. We all have that right. And as long as it wasn't shooting into crowds of people and, being unsafe in the response, one would assume if you're going to be attacked, at least I was not attacked while I was around other people. The 3 times that it happened, I was solo, either by myself somewhere with people not around close. So in that situation, I would assume you would have the right to protect yourself, rightfully so.
Well, that's...
I know, I do have a license and I have to carry it. I know the law is, I think if you're at home, if somebody breaks into your home, if they're coming at you, if you think your life is in danger, I know for a fact, I guess you can protect yourself by shooting your gun off.
Yes.
That's
stand your ground. The Castle Doctrine.
Castle Doctrine? Okay.
Right, but I think that the stand your ground that we have here in New Hampshire follows you to where you are legally.
It says anywhere that you have a legal right to be.
Right.
You have the right to defend yourself.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes.
Well, you answered my question.
Well, understand, please.
You're really, really good speakers.
Well, thank you. And we're pretty scary, actually.
No, I don't think so. Maybe.
I would always say that situational awareness is critical to anyone.
Right.
Know where you are. Be aware of your circumstances. Don't put yourself in places that you shouldn't be.
Good.
But also there's some great courses here in New Hampshire. In fact, one maybe Friday or Saturday that talks about New Hampshire gun laws. And they're not expensive, and they're taught by experts. And it's a wonderful thing.
Where would you get that info?
Well, can I give a bit of a
Oh,
plug
please.
here?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, please do.
If you were to go to a website called Defensive Strategies, New Hampshire, it's a pretty complicated website because there's so much going on there. The gentleman who runs Defensive Strategies, a fellow named Bob Bollard, is in fact organizing this, if it hasn't already happened, in the next day or two, afternoon on New Hampshire gun laws. And it's always good to familiarize yourself with that. None of us is a lawyer, but knowledge is a wonderful thing. And knowing who good gun attorneys are in New Hampshire is not a bad thing either.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of really excellent ones, one of whom is a woman, by the way.
Yeah.
But take the time, learn what you can, and knowledge is a key to everything.
Thank you.
All right, Tom. Thank you for
Thank you very
calling.
much. I have one question for Matt.
Sure.
Hi, Matt. Yeah, I was wondering when you're going to have, the Assistant Chief Willett on your show again.
Assistant what?
Who is that? I'm sorry.
The Assistant Chief Willett, the Manchester Police Department Chief Willett.
Chief.
Have him on again? I don't remember ever having him on.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. Maybe it wasn't on your show. I'm sorry then.
That's okay.
Maybe you
Tom.
should.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I don't remember that. But what with Stand Your Ground? So how can you talk a little bit about how specifically that works? You have to feel that you're in
Imminent danger.
Imminent danger. So do they? I mean, if someone doesn't have a weapon, but they chase you or approach you aggressively, I
Right.
mean.
Well, first of all, what's a weapon? I mean, a baseball bat's a weapon.
Yeah.
A strong wit is a weapon.
But are you allowed to use deadly force with a firearm if someone
Yes.
approaches you?
If
with
they
a
come
bat or-
me with a bat, if they
Yeah.
have a bat and I have a gun, they just lose.
Okay.
Because let's face it, they can kill me with that bat.
Yeah.
I think that probably common sense too in the situation, or one would hope common sense would reign in that situation if you had to go before a court about it. But
Right.
I mean, even someone that was choking me,
Yeah.
right? If it was a gentleman or a large person that I could not, get away from, and they were hurting me, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think the key is in fear for your life.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is such a controversial law, not only in New Hampshire but in other states.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's not well interpreted
Yes.
by folks, and has a real pejorative context to it. So the issue, as far as I'm concerned, is that it clarifies that you are allowed to protect yourself anywhere you have a legal right to be.
Yeah.
And that's the key.
The Stand Your Ground law this year was not the Castle doctrine part of it, but the outside the home. They tried to manipulate the law so that you would not have those same rights that you have in your home if you were outside your home, and that's why we fought back on that.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, if I have my son with me and I'm in a parking lot and something happens, do you really think, stuck in a car, that we have many options open to us to be able to escape? That was part of the wording. That wording of that law to me was so dumb. I know I was a freshman legislator, but to me, not a lick of common sense.
Right.
How are
right.
you supposed to do that? And you know what? We shouldn't have to. We shouldn't
Right.
even have to discuss that stupidity. If my son and I are, especially having my son there, all bets are off at that point.
Right, of course,
And they should
of
be.
course.
We should all feel that we can protect ourselves. That is our right,
Yeah.
a natural right. Government doesn't give us that right. That is a natural right. And, we shouldn't allow anybody to loosen it or to make it any less than what it means, which is what the left tries to do. They try to sort of soften up the ground so that they can, take a little bit at a time. We're losing all kinds of our rights that way. Little piece here, a little piece there.
Yeah.
And that's part of some of the legislative efforts is to get a little piece in now, and then it's kind of like a Christmas tree, and they come back and they
Yes.
hang an ornament on it next year, and
Take another
they have
bite
a
of the
much
cookie.
longer view. Yeah.
And you know what? People do not understand that. I have to say, probably the most awesome thing in my mind for the past couple of years since I've been political, because I was never a political animal.
Oh, really?
I was about performing. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, my
Yeah.
whole life, until 3 years ago. And when I look now and see how the painting has turned, how the picture has turned, it's awesome to me to think that I never thought before that these folks that want to try to really attach a lot of our rights are so patient. And it's not even the bill they're on right now. They're already contemplating the next bill.
Right. Yeah.
And that to me is like, wow, I can't believe people really do that. I've had to learn that
Sure.
that's the game.
Oh yeah.
You know?
A lot of successful politicians know how to play the long game.
Yes.
Three-dimensional chess.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Three-dimensional chess, absolutely.
Have there been any stand your ground cases that have come up in New Hampshire specifically?
No,
Since that was
I don't
passed,
recall
no?
any, no.
no, not of which I'm aware.
Well, that, and again, I mean, that would speak to how safe it is
That's
here.
right.
So
That's right.
that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I hope it stays that way too,
No.
because the dialogue of that we don't need automatic weapons, whatever an automatic weapon is.
No, their automatic weapons are prohibited by federal law.
Well, they define certain weapons to be, don't they?
Well, we don't call them weapons. We call them firearms.
Yeah.
We try to make the distinction. I mean, a baseball could be a weapon. An apple could be a weapon. Firearm is a firearm.
Right.
Okay.
So what is
it
that
doesn't
automatic
become a
thing?
weapon. Well, I think maybe you may have been talking about assault rifles.
There you go. The ban on the assault. Automatic, because I usually see automatic thrown in
Well,
there.
automatic
But
means
it's a misnomer.
It is a misnomer because you cannot purchase
Right.
an automatic weapon, which is you pull the trigger and it doesn't stop firing.
Yeah.
Like you see in Rambo.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Or a machine gun or something like that. Semi-automatic pistols are firearms that load one cartridge at a time, but it's done automatically. Once you've pulled a trigger and you've ejected a cartridge and a bullet has left the muzzle, then the mechanism is built where the next cartridge is then loaded into the chamber, but you still have to pull the trigger.
Right. Right.
So a lot of people don't really understand how firearms work, and that's one of the good things about going through a basic class is you learn all of that stuff.
Right.
You learn which is the pointy end and which is the business end, and what all of these things mean.
But
And
the political side of it, right? What they've done is they're using this terminology to keep factual stuff away from the regular folks that
it's scary.
yeah, to scare them. For instance, if somebody wants to ban, right, automatic weapons, well, you just said you can't buy them now anyway. So
Well,
what are
bad
they
guys
saying?
can buy them, and that's always the thing. Is bad guys know how to get hold of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So they don't really pay attention to law. They don't fill out those forms typically.
Yeah.
And if they do, they probably lie.
Right.
So
Sure.
yeah, it's silliness.
Yes.
Yeah.
So and again, a lot of it is not being educated. Are you aware, in fact, speaking of education, that in New Hampshire statute, firearms training is allowed in schools?
I
Yes,
didn't know
absolutely.
that. I didn't
Yes,
know that.
it is.
Cool. That
We
is
have
It's on the books.
we have a call. We got time to sneak one more in here.
Okay.
Hi, welcome to Rock Paper Hand Grenades. Who's on the line?
Yeah, it's Steve again. Just a quick question to the lady in the. I just wanted to tell her something. What she just mentioned about the automatic weapons. What they're complaining about is the semi-automatic weapons like an AR-15 or an AK-47, where you can have a magazine that maybe has 30, 40, 50, 75 rounds to it.
Right.
You have to keep pulling the trigger.
Right.
But the whole key to it is that you can actually fire maybe up to 60, 75 rounds if you have that type of magazine.
Right.
And that's what they don't like.
Okay.
It actually turns out to be almost like an automatic weapon, but you got to keep pulling it.
Yes.
You don't just hold your finger down.
Well,
So that's what they're complaining about. I believe in Massachusetts right now, if you were to go by, say for instance, you came from Massachusetts and you came to New Hampshire, and you live in Massachusetts, come to New Hampshire, the first thing they're going to ask you is, you're from Massachusetts, can't you sell you this AR-15 with the 30-round capacity? You're going to have to go with 10 because Massachusetts made a law that you can't have a magazine over 10.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Now, what also people don't realize, an AR-15 is nothing but a glorified rifle.
Absolutely.
A shotgun can do more damage than an AR-15. But if you look at an AR-15, it looks like
That's
something
right.
that's out on a battlefield.
Yes.
You put the scopes on there, you put the
It's
magazine
a modified
in.
M4.
It looks really ominous.
Yes.
But a 308 there was a lady, what was it, like about 2 weeks ago, I was watching a show, a sharpshooter, showed she shot with a 308, she shot with a shotgun. The AR-15 made less of a hole than all the other guns combined, but because it looks so ominous and so why you can have so many bullets in the magazine, that's
Right.
what they want to get rid of.
Right. So
that-
it's all it's again the left that wants to try to control what we can have open to us is quick to look at that gun. I think the AK-47 that you mentioned and demonize on the look of that gun and call it what it isn't, in hopes that they can change some hearts and minds about these dangerous, unneeded weaponry, that's out there. So
Right.
It's crazy.
Like I was saying, that the sharpshooter showed, she shot every gun,
Mm-hmm.
and the AR-15, which is the most popular semi-automatic right now in all the gun stores, they're selling them left and right.
Yep.
She showed the bullet holes in the what the AR-15 made, and she showed with the shotgun, the regular 45, the 308. They made bigger holes than the AR-15 was,
Absolutely.
but the whole thing about a shotgun has probably got the capacity of maybe 5 or 6 in the chamber,
Right.
where you got to, reload it. But with the AR-15, all you got to do is put the magazine in that maybe has 30 to 75 rounds. You don't have to keep, stopping and loading, stopping
Right.
and loading. Like you can just go, bang, 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 bang. You just got to keep pulling the trigger. That's
Right.
what they want to get rid of. So
Yes.
it's like, say there's like about 30, 40 people coming at you.
We're about out of time, Steve. We got to let you go.
Okay.
All right, thank
Thank you.
Steve calls once in a while. He gets a
doesn't-
little long-winded, but
Nah.
I do appreciate the call, Steve. Thank you. We appreciate it. Before we have to wrap up, can you tell us how do we find your organization online? Anything we need to know? Any events you got coming up? Anything?
Absolutely. You can go to www.packingnh.net.
Okay.
And I could also refer you to another organization with which I'm affiliated called the Women's Defense League of New Hampshire, which is firearms training for women and education, and that is Women's Defense League, newhampshire.com. I think we're a .com. Shame on me. We're a fairly new organization, Women's Defense League, NH.com. And in fact, we have an event at Elkins Fish and Game this Sunday, open to women, 12 to 3 in Wilmot, New Hampshire, where if you've never shot a pistol before, you're welcome to come, and there are excellent trained, certified instructors there who'd be happy to show you. And there's a big gun show in Manchester this weekend.
Oh, okay. Oh, very cool. Good. All right.
Guns, guns, guns!
Jane, you got anything to plug?
I have nothing to plug. Isn't that terrible? Do I have? I don't think. This is probably the first time in months that I haven't had anything to plug. Holy
Well,
moly.
it takes some pressure off anyway.
There you go.
So you'll be back next week?
I will, sir. Be
Excellent.
happy to.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And Gary, if you're watching, hang in there, man. We love you. Take care, and we will see y'all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.